This edge rusher draft class is absolutely stacked. There's certainly no Myles Garrett or Chase Young as the clear-cut number 1 on everyone's draft board, but overall it is a very, very deep group. The Browns heading into the draft don't have many holes on their roster, and you might think the last thing they need is another edge rusher. Garrett, the newly signed Clowney and McKinley are a great rotation, and another edge rusher seems just like another waste of a high draft pick. But don't forget, Clowney and McKinley both on one-year deals, and both not likely long-term solution to that edge rusher position across from Myles Garrett. This edge rusher class is just that talented that if the Browns are sitting at the 26th pick and there's edge rushers on the board, I find it hard to believe they're not going to take that best guy available. The Browns are in a position where they don't need to reach for a guy that has to contribute right away because they have such a talented roster. So today I want to go over my personal top 3 rankings in this edge rusher draft class, but I also want to outline my 2 favorite day 2/day 3 sleepers that could be incredible steals in the later rounds of the draft. So with all that said, let's analyze some film. So let's start things off with one of my favorite guys to watch in this class. You don't hear his name very often, which is why he's one of my sleepers, and that is Peyton Turner out of the University of Houston. He is a big rusher. He's 6'5", 270, and has incredible length with 35-inch arms. Now, I obviously like Turner as a prospect because he's got that big frame, great length, athletic, and has a hot motor, but what makes him special on tape is his ability to confuse tackles and cause them to overset because of his pass rush arsenal. Take this series of plays against BYU. Early in the game, he beats the tackle with a straight, powerful bull rush. He gets right on the tackle's shoulder pads with great hand placement and uses all of those 270 pounds to drive him back to the quarterback. Turner is a very powerful rusher with absurdly long arms, and so once he gets control of your chest, you flat out are not recovering. The right tackle's mistake on this play was not establishing hand contact early in the rush. He waits for Turner to make his move and leaves his chest open, which obviously was a mistake in the end. So later in the game, from the same defensive alignment, the tackle shoots out to meet Turner to cut off that bull rush before he can develop it. He gets his hands up and tries to land his punches early, knowing if he doesn't keep his chest clean, he'll just get driven back to the pocket again. Turner knows and sees this and uses a counter to his bull rush. He jabs outside like he did last time, causing the tackle to overset to the outside, anticipating that bull rush. This time he swats down the tackle's inside hand to prevent the tackle from getting any leverage on his chest, and he uses a swim move to easily get around the tackle and disrupt the throw. Turner embarrassed tackles this year, including first-round guys like Brady Christensen, the BYU tackle, because he has the pure power, but he can also change from a bull rush to a swim in a flash, which makes it very difficult to block him. Tackles are so focused on stopping that outside bull rush, which allows Turner to counter inside all the time. And now what you'll hear about Turner heading into the draft is that he has limited bend, his injury history is scary, and he has iffy hand placement. Turner doesn't have an elite bend at 270 pounds. He's 6'6". He's never going to bend like Myles Garrett. That's just not his style. But he certainly can get around tackles and attack their outside shoulder. It's shown up time and time again. His injury history is a legitimate concern, but he only missed 2 games due to injury in 2020, which were minor ones, and played all of 2019. His initial hand placement can be off at times, but he's so instinctive and relentless with insanely long arms that it's impossible to keep him blocked for long before he eventually fights through you. He is the consensus 10 to 12th edge rusher in this class, which would be very good value on day 2 when I personally think he's worthy of a first-round pick. So before we move on to my top 3 guys, I do want to talk a little bit about my second sleeper, Malcolm Koontz out of Buffalo. He reminds me a lot of Von Miller. They are eerily similar to each other. Both are 6'3", 250 pounds, and both have 33-inch arms, and they share the same defining trait: unblockable bend and explosiveness off the line of scrimmage. Both of them excel deploying what's called a swipe move. On this play, Koontz does a great job tricking the tackle into giving him the leverage to execute this swipe move. When he bursts off the edge, he presents his chest to the tackle as a bait to get the tackle to try to land his punch. Then when the tackle overextends to try to make contact with him, he swipes those hands away and dips around the tackle to make the sack. Now just watching Von Miller, you can see him do the exact same thing. He opens up his chest, gets the tackle to raise his hands, and as soon as those hands come up, he swipes them away and gets the strip sack. The swipe move is very difficult to execute because you have to have a combination of length, speed, ankle flexion, bendability, and instinctive hand use. Koontz has all of it. Now, greasing the edge, which means smoothly bending around the corner, is very important for an edge rusher, but a successful one needs to be able to convert that speed to power. If you don't have the strength to use an inside counter, tackles will always expect an outside rush and will act accordingly. Koontz can also do that. He can drive you back to the quarterback with his long arm move. He has exceptional lower body strength and a great anchor, which makes it difficult for offensive linemen to recover once he gets his hand on their shoulder pad. Tackles are worried about cutting off the edge because of Koontz's elite quickness and speed, so when Koontz jabs inside and drives them back to the quarterback, they can't react because he's just that quick. Now, Koontz is projected to be a 5th to 6th round edge rusher because he does come from a small college in a small conference, and his technique as a run defender is flat out awful. Still, I think Koontz is definitely worth a day 2 pick and could be an elite edge rusher in the NFL in the future with the right development. He needs to be coached up to play against the run, and I have no doubt he could be a quality run defender because he has incredible hand use rushing the passer, which can definitely translate against the run with some time. Alright, so let's get into my top 3 edge rushers for this 2021 NFL Draft, and that's going to start with Ronnie Perkins out of Oklahoma at the 3rd spot. Now, this might seem like a surprisingly high ranking for him, but Perkins just has a rare combination of speed and power. When I watched Perkins, the first word I thought of was reckless. He really is just a giant ball of energy that you really don't know where it's going to go, but it's going to go somewhere and it's going to cause some damage. Perkins is extremely explosive as both a pass rusher and a run defender. He embarrassed Tevin Jenkins in the Oklahoma State game, who is a top 20 player in the draft, mind you, with his ruthless long arm move, and overall, Perkins just has a knack for collapsing the pocket with his pure power alone. Perkins also has that very good bend around the corner and has a lot of flexibility in his ankles that allow him to make those defying physics type rushes around the corner. As a run defender, Perkins is very instinctive, and coupled with his shiftiness, he blows up runs on a regular basis. Teams just wouldn't run at him at all, and when they tried to on those rare occasions, he made them pay for it. He splits double teams, he beats pulling guards to the spot. He's one of, if not the best run defender of this class. He's undoubtedly very raw. He doesn't have the largest toolbox of pass rush moves, and he needs to develop sounder technique. Perkins is an upside pick as an edge rusher because he has the athleticism, he has the physicality, he has the motor, but he doesn't have the same toolbox and number of pass rush moves that some of the other guys in this class do. That doesn't mean he's a very risky pick. It's not a boom or bust guy. All draft picks are risky, but he isn't especially risky. His instincts and power and just overall feel for football are just too good for him not to bust out. Perkins is a raw prospect, but technique is coachable. Instincts, general feel for hand fighting, and power, all things that Perkins has in spades, are definitely not coachable traits. The second spot in my rankings goes to none other than Miami's Jalen Phillips. He, in my opinion, is the most polished all-around pass rusher in this edge rusher draft class. He has countless moves in his back pocket on every given snap, which makes him a very unpredictable rusher and a nuisance to block. Similar to Peyton Turner, Phillips excels at attacking both the inside and outside shoulders of offensive tackles. except Phillips just has an absurd number of moves and counters with smoother execution. In the Virginia Tech game, Phillips was killing the right tackle with all his moves and counters, and the tackle never knew what was coming on a given play. So for example, on one play, Phillips uses a chop-dip combo to attack the tackle's outside shoulder. He uses his outside hand and chops the tackle's outside hand, and then dips under the tackle's chest plate to get the immediate pressure. On the very next play, Phillips jabs his left foot outside to get the tackle to lean in the direction of the potential chop dip. Phillips then knows this and sidesteps to the right and uses his swim move, which he executes in a flash. You can even see the tackle is completely still during the swim move, since it is very smooth and very quick. Phillips has ridiculous lateral quickness and change of direction that make him a net menace for an offensive tackle to block. As a run defender, particularly when setting the edge, he can sometimes shy away from contact, and he can try to get too fancy and try to dip under a block instead of just taking it on and forcing everything inside, which causes his team to sometimes get gashed for big yardage. Phillips tends to play sometimes too high with a narrow base, which is ineffective when taking on a moving blocker. Now, there are legitimate concerns, like some of these other edge rushers, with his injury. He was forced to retire before he transferred to Miami, so there is a legitimate concern about that, which might cause him to slip. But this guy, in a draft where he doesn't have these concussion issues, these lingering questions about his long-term health, he could potentially be a top 10, top 15 draft pick, so nabbing him in the first round, maybe even early second, would be one of the steals of this draft. So now, my top-ranked edge rusher in this class, Azeez Ojulari out of Georgia. Now, there are many things I love about Ojulari, but none more than his signature cross-chop move. His cross-chop move should be teaching tape for all edge rushers, college and in the NFL, trying to perfect their cross-chop. His technique is near perfect. I'm not exaggerating, it is a thing of beauty. Just watching it on tape, you can see just the execution and the design and just the understanding of how to execute it. He maintains distance from the tackle, he uses his length to place that inside hand on the tackle's chest, and then chops the tackle's outside hand with his outside hand and turns the corner. His cross chop is so lethal because he has exceptional get off, speed, bend, and he has those very long arms, and couple that with his near perfect technique and hand placement that makes it difficult on even the most athletic of tackles. Now, an edge rusher can't be a one-trick pony. We've talked about that a lot on this episode. And Ojulari is still progressing and developing these power counters that are very necessary to succeed, but he's shown major flashes of being able to jab his foot outside, force the tackle to overextend, and then use that leverage to rush inside. A very common criticism of Ojulari's is that his smaller size prevents him from being a good run defender, and that he just won't have a career in the NFL as a 3-down edge rusher, and he'll be forced to be a pass rush specialist. He plays the run with a very wide base and actively takes on blocks from 330-pound pulling guards and still manages to set the edge. He is an extremely physical run defender, and thanks to his incredible length, tackles can't really move black Ojulari. If anything, his shortcomings as a run defender are just not knowing how to use his hands against athletic tackles, but he does not get shoved around at all, even against guards 70 pounds heavier than him, moving in his direction. Ojulari has the potential to be one of the best edge rushers in the NFL if he can get in a pro weight training program to work on that upper body, add some more mass there to allow him to use more inside power counters to make sure that he has success in the league. His floor as a prospect is Yannick Ngakoue, and his ceiling is Khalil Mack. I really believe that Azeez Ojulari is the best edge rusher in this class, and that he's going to be a special player in the NFL, and I'm really hoping it's as a Brown.